1. I'm still pissed at this guy's pathetic display of chivalry. I should probably have hit him, but I think it's best I didn't. Relevant to this story, I grew up in a small town that's part of what we call the West Side here in Denmark. People often joke about people from the West Side, because that's where you can find most of the tough guys here, similar to what chavs are in the UK. Although I am very far from living up to that stereotype. This story. I spent my whole day helping my friend moving out of his apartment, and I was exhausted. So I went to the usual bar and hoped to see some friends and chill, because I had to move my own stuff out of my mum's house the next day. At the bar, I meet one of my friends, who had also brought some of her friends with her. This one friend, let's call her Milady, because that's our fair maiden that needs saving, introduced herself to me and asked for my name. I told her my name, and we started chatting a bit. She was probably in her late 20s or something, and okay looking, but I wasn't interested in her. Standing next to her is our hero, gonna call him Maximus Pretentious. This guy was probably between 45 to 50 years old and didn't really look like a neckbeard, but as we all know, it's the beard on the inside that counts. Milady asks me about my personal life, and I answer her questions one by one. She then asks about my occupation, and I tell her I'm working full-time as an IT consultant. "Oh, so you make good money then?" she asked. I smiled and replied, "Yeah, I guess you can say that. I'm being paid pretty above decent pay for a new graduate." Out of nowhere, our hero, who has been standing next to us and not being a part of our conversation, laughs out. "Ha! Want to compare paychecks then?" I got curious and asked about his occupation. I don't know how to translate it to English terms, but he is apparently something along the lines of lead production manager for a well-known company. Way to belittle me, asshole. I pretended to be interested, though, not to start a discussion about it. We keep the chat going as she asks about where I grew up. I tell her the name of the town I grew up in, and she starts mocking me a bit about it. I joke along, puff out my chest and say something along the lines of, "Yeah, I'm fucking tough, yeah. You wanna catch my hands or something?" Much to our amusal. We went inside to get something to drink and continued our conversation downstairs in the bar. At this point I was standing with two of my friends, Milady and Maximus Pretentious. Conversation continued and everybody seemed to have fun. That's when I decided to keep the tough guy joke going and puffed myself up in front of Milady. And that's when Maximus Pretentious had enough. Even though she was visibly laughing about it, he grabbed my collar and said, "Enough of that!" At this point everybody else was smiling, so I thought he meant it as a joke as well. I kept smiling like an idiot through the whole thing, and thought that he just wanted to play along with the whole tough guy attitude. But after a couple of seconds I asked him, his hand still in my collar, "I honestly can't tell if you're being serious now or not." "Oh, I'm dead serious," he said. That's when I told him, "Look dude, I was just joking around, I meant nothing about it, you can let me go now," and tried to calmly remove his hands from me. He tightened his grip and was getting very uncomfortable now. "Apologize to her." I repeated myself and said, "Dude, it was a joke, stop being so angry about it." But he kept staring me in the eyes with the most try-hard tough guy facial expression I had seen, and started heavily breathing. Didn't matter how many times I repeated myself. I'm not the most muscular guy in town, but I was visibly more fit than him. So I grabbed his wrists, pulled them away from me, and pushed him back. At this point my friends had seen the whole ordeal and came to my assistance. But I decided to just head out of the bar instead of staying there. I was already tired after moving all day, had to move my own stuff to the new apartment the next day, and this guy just drained me of my last energy I wanted to spend with my friends. Fuck that guy for ruining my evening. 2. Hello dear readers and welcome to one of the rarer experiences I've had, which was with an infamous legbeard. For some context, when I graduated high school I was a bit lost, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and was just all around aimless. Spooky encouraged me to try and get a college degree, which I do have in business now, but at the time I was clueless. Enter my uncle, the owner of his own small insurance agency, and all-around great guy. To make an already long story shorter, my uncle got me a job through his agency as an inbound call representative. It was a pretty awesome gig. I sat in a comfy air-conditioned office for 8 hours answering the phone, directing customer calls and answering questions as best I could. I loved everything about my job, except her. The her to whom I am referring I shall call Pat, in honor of the androgynous SNL character with which she shared an unfortunate resemblance. Pat was a co-worker of mine for the entirety of the 3 years I worked in that department, before I became a fully licensed agent, and easily the worst part of my job. As stated before, she shared an uncanny likeness for the SNL character: short, rotund, greasy, matted hair, and thick-lensed glasses. The only difference being she wore a variety of brightly colored dresses, the patterns of which would not look out of place in a lava lamp. She was loud, obnoxious, and always had a faint odor of macadamia nuts and stale cigarettes. A combination, I don't think I need to tell you, was not a pleasant one. Aside from her overtly obnoxious personality, she also exhibited beard-like qualities. No concept of personal boundaries, complete obliviousness to her own cringy behavior, and more importantly, denial that any rejection she faced was the fault of anyone else but her. Now, Pat had something of an attachment to me. Always right next to me at any given moment, and always making comments about my appearance or accent. I'm Irish, if you couldn't guess from the username, the Big Irish Guru 23, and I still have a bit of a brogue whenever I said anything. At first it was bearable. Though I wasn't a fan of the attention she gave me, for a while I thought I'd seen the worst of it. If that were the case, I wouldn't be writing this. The day of the incident started out innocent enough, with an early morning influx of people needing quotes, claims filed, etc. And I was happily lounged back in my cushy chair talking to a lovely old lady about how we couldn't insure her cat, when out of the corner of my eye I see Pat is staring at me. Now this was a fairly normal occurrence, so at first I didn't pay attention to her, until I noticed her inching closer and closer with her chair until she was right at the edge of my desk. And there she sat, staring at me, flabby arms resting on my desk. I eyed her uncomfortably as I finished up helping the old lady. "Okay, Mrs. Murdoch. Yes, I'm very sorry, ma'am. No, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. You enjoy the rest of the day. Okay, bye-bye. Can I help you with something, Pat?"
Oh, I just love the way you talk. Something about it just drives me wild.
Okay, I'm just gonna go to the men's room. I quickly stood up, hurrying away from my desk amidst the snickers of my fellow co-workers, and entering the bathroom. I stayed in there for a good 15 minutes texting Spooky. After some much-needed encouragement from the Spook, I calmly walked to my desk and continued working. The next few hours went by relatively quickly. All the while, Pat would glance at me in between clients, making it incredibly difficult to focus. But I somehow made it to lunch, and the office slowly emptied save for myself and Pat. I was broke till payday, so I couldn't afford to eat out, instead going to the break room to eat the lunch Spooky had made me. Did I mention I love her? Because I'm still kicking myself for not saying that sooner. And sat down near a window to eat the delicious pastrami and rye with spicy pickles, when I heard the door open and shut. In my head, please don't be Pat, please don't be Pat, please don't be Pat.
Hey there, cutie.
God damn it. I looked over at her, and was startled to see that she had pulled the top of her dress down to expose more cleavage. She sauntered over to an empty chair across from me and straddled it, reverse cowgirl style, and winked at me.
Like what you see, handsome?
Not even a little. What the fuck are you doing?
Oh, I just thought I'd try something new. Show a little more of the goods.
She chuckled and bit her lip, which might have looked attractive if she didn't look like a pug. Keep in mind, I was 19 at the time, and Pat was well into her 30s, so it was weird on multiple levels that this woman was hitting on me. I'm not even that good looking. Pat's breasts were mashed against the chair, giving the impression of 2 beanbags being put through a compress, and she just sat there biting her lip at me like I would swoon at any moment. Instead, I wrapped up my sandwich and stood up, walking briskly past her. And that was when she slapped my ass. I spun around, ready to lay into her, but upon turning around, her hand met my crotch and she attempted to close her hand around my Lucky Charms, before I jumped back, crying out.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Oh, don't be that way. I'm just having some fun,
Pat said in a pouty voice. I stared at her gobsmacked for a moment, before dashing out of the lunchroom for my uncle's office, saying a prayer he was still in. I knocked on his door and thankfully heard his deep voice call back. "Go on in, door's open." I burst into his office, breathing heavily from anger and exertion, and he stared at my sudden and violent entrance.
Jesus, boy, what's the matter?
I quickly and breathlessly explained what had happened, and a look of pure rage crossed his face.
The fat sow did what now? Stay here, boy, while I fetch her.
And with that he stormed out of the office. I sat in one of his chairs, frantically texting Spooky and SJ what had happened.
I'ma fucking kill her.
I'll help you hide the body. You okay, bro?
I don't know, a little shook up, but fine.
I'ma fucking kill her.
After a few minutes, my uncle returned, with a very confused Pat in tow, who upon seeing me got a look of fear on her face.
What's this about, sir?
My nephew here says you grabbed him. I think you know I don't tolerate harassment of any kind in my offices, especially not against my own blood. Explain yourself.
Pat immediately launched into apology mode, not even trying to deny the allegations, saying she didn't mean to do it, that she wouldn't do it again, and a lot of incoherent bubbling I couldn't comprehend. My uncle sat there quietly, arms folded, listening to her spiel before speaking.
I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in my business. If you cannot keep your hands to yourself, you have no place here. Kindly pack your things and leave.
Pat looked at me, then back to my uncle, eyes wide with shock.
Are you firing me?
I am. This isn't the first time my nephew's complained about your antics. But I've let it slide till now. But you do not touch anyone in that manner, and you're lucky the boy's not getting the law involved. Now leave.
Pat turned and exited, shooting me a hateful look before marching off. I looked at my uncle appreciatively.
Thanks. Of course, I'm sorry I didn't do anything sooner.
I shrugged, just relieved I'd no longer have to deal with Pat's harassment. Just wishing I didn't have to be physically assaulted for it to happen. 3. I was hoping to get through the holidays without having any strange, cringy, or just downright goofy encounters with anything even remotely resembling a neckbeard. It seems, however, that Spooky and I are magnets for these kinds of stories. One such incident happening just 2 days ago. As I have stated previously, Spooky and I are engaged, and this being our first Thanksgiving as fiancés, we decided to have both our families over to my apartment for dinner. I would handle the cooking, Spooky would handle the entertainment, and we pictured in our heads this lovely evening of family time. As you might guess, this didn't happen because my parents decided to invite my cousin Benny. My aunt and uncle were vacationing in Tampa for the holidays, and my parents had agreed to watch my 15-year-old cousin Benny, whom I cannot stand. He is the most spoiled, obnoxious, disgusting, and just downright nasty human being I've ever met. And those are about the nicest things I can say about him. Spooky had never met Benny prior to this Thanksgiving, so before our families arrive, I gave her a quick crash course in what she should expect. So let me get this straight, your cousin, whom I have never met, will most likely be obnoxiously perverted towards me just because I'm female. Yeah, pretty much. Dumbass has been thrown out of 3 schools and 2 youth groups because he can't keep his greasy hands to himself. And your family sees no issue with this? Oh, believe me, they do. Why do you think his parents pawned him off on mine? They don't want to deal with his shit in Tampa. What should I do? If he gets handsy with you in any way, I give you full permission to backhand him. Despite the shadow of Benny hanging over us like a foreboding dirigible, Spooky and I were adamant about making the night a success. At around 3 o'clock, our families started to arrive. Spooky's parents and grandparents first, then my favorite cousin Andy, SJ, who was always invited to our get-togethers, and his dad, and then finally my parents, and Benny. I hadn't seen him for nearly 2 years, but he was unmistakable. Greasy hair cut short into a sort of buzz cut, if it were given by someone with Parkinson's disease, thick black glasses supported by a bulbous red nose, greasy stubble spattered along his 3 chins, and an oversized leather jacket with knuckle gloves and UFO pants. His fashion sense was as if someone had covered themselves in glue and rolled down the 90s clearance aisle at your local Goodwill. My parents looked exhausted, my dad valiantly trying to keep his face straight and calm, but the vein bulging on his forehead told me he was very much at his limit. As soon as he saw me and Spooky, his features visibly lit up, giving us both a rough hug and whispering in my ear, "Son,
Please, tell me you've got booze.
In the cupboard over the fridge I've got whiskey, vodka and Jaeger. In the fridge I've got Guinness.
God bless you, boy.
My dad grabbed my mom's hand and they made a beeline for my liquor, me making a mental note to resupply. Benny, his eyes bored from scanning my apartment, found me and sneered.
Nice place you got here. How many dicks did you have to suck to be able to make rent?
He guffawed at his own joke, and I just looked at Spooky with a, yeah, it's gonna get worse look. Benny's eyes roved over Spooky, and he quite audibly licked his lips.
And this ravishing specimen must be your girl. How you doing, cutie?
Spooky cocked an eyebrow at Benny and just nodded curtly before walking into the kitchen. I sighed heavily.
Nice piece of ass you got there, cuz. If you get bored with her, send her my way.
Now you listen here, you little... Babe, can you come here for a sec? I took a deep breath before turning on my heel and going over to Spooky. What? Look, I know he's an ass, but don't let it bother you. We've got this. I hugged her tightly. I'll try, but I can't guarantee his safety. Spooky laughed. Well, as long as you try. To make a long story shorter, for the next few hours everything went fine. Dinner was served, drinks were had, and games were played, and overall we had a wonderful time. But throughout the night, Benny kept on making rude and snide remarks about pretty much everyone. Asking FJ if he was a cousin fucker, Spooky if she liked anal, Andy when he was coming out of the closet, etc., etc. Overall, we did our best to ignore him, and this seemed to annoy him because he kept upping the ante, trying desperately to get a reaction. And he got exactly that towards the end of the night. As Spooky and I were cleaning up the kitchen and our families were drinking eggnog, watching Christmas movies, Benny wandered into the kitchen as I was washing dishes and Spooky wiping off the table.
Damn, she's got you on a leash, Jay, making you wash the dishes. Bet you let her fuck you in the ass too, right? A little bit of pegging for the little bitch you are. Do you think... Whack!
I spun around to see Spooky shaking with rage, and Benny lying sprawled out on the kitchen floor clutching a bleeding nose. Spooky loomed over the terrified little shit yelling, "Don't you ever grab my ass, you disgusting little prick!" I glared at the bleeding Benny with pure hatred. "You touched my fiancé? What the fuck is wrong with you?" By this time our families had piled into the kitchen, mine and Spooky's dads dragging Benny away, and our moms doing their best to calm us down. Benny could be heard wailing about how his parents would sue us, and how he would file charges, until it finally seemed like my dad had enough of Benny. "No, you listen here, you brat. Whatever Spooky did to you was probably justified. My son welcomes you into his home, feeds you and puts up with your shit all night, all the while you're acting like the rude little fuck you are, and now you have the balls to grab his future wife and act surprised that she snapped? I will call my brother myself and tell him what a horrid piece of human garbage you are. And if he has any sense, he'll cart you off to military school as soon as he gets home." My dad continued to yell, until he finally marched Benny down to their car. My mom told me she should probably go with him, otherwise my dad would kill Benny, so one by one our family filed out, giving us hugs and saying we were perfectly in the right. Spooky and I spent the rest of the night drinking and watching The Grinch, wondering if Benny would try to come after us with a lawsuit if my uncle wasn't understanding to our circumstances and swallowed whatever BS story Benny comes up with. But that's a worry for another day. Update. From what my dad has told me, Benny will be sent to a reform school starting next week. Apparently it's been found out that he has also been indicted in an incident at Walmart where he was seen on cameras jacking off into women's underwear. 4. So I moved into my apartment complex about 6 months ago. I live in the downtown core of Toronto, which has notorious insanely expensive housing prices. Like seriously, the average price for a house here hovers around $1 million. I got an incredibly good deal on an apartment in an amazing location. One flatmate who doesn't really bother me at all, and so far it's been pretty great. I'm in grad school, medical science, so I have to live close to my lab due to unpredictable and long hours. Now we have our introduction over with, let me tell you the tale of Neckbeard. Oh, Neckbeard, where to start? The guy was insanely tall, nearly 7 feet tall. Now I am 6'1" and this guy absolutely towers over me. Like seriously, I come up to not even his shoulder. He looked like an ent had weird sex with Chris Chan, and this sweaty stick insect was the product of their unholy congregation. He's real thin, and his baggy clothes only emphasize this fact. He'd wear baggy ripped jeans, enormous headphones around his thin neck, and some sort of comic book themed t-shirt. I originally called him Groot when I first saw him. Reekbeard's apartment is just down the hall from mine, his door being about 10 feet away from mine. Fortunately, my building is on the older side and the walls are thicker than a snicker, making the units effectively soundproof from each other, so any noises he does make I don't even notice. However, for what he lacks in sound, he more than makes up for in smell. I had to stand next to him in the elevator down, and let me tell you, it's magnificent. The smell is unlike anything I've ever experienced. He smelled like 1,000 corpses had vomited, like Satan's ball sweat, like the dumpster outside of a fish processing plant, like the chasm of eldritch abysms of shrieking lunacy and all forms of moral contradictions. He reeked. I almost vomited just standing next to him. Introducing my girlfriend, Tiny. She is, hence the nickname, Tiny. She is ultimate beard bait. Mixed race, half Scottish, half Chinese, and looks somewhat like an anime girl, petite build, short, around 5'3", cute, and busty despite the build. In her words, a white body on an Asian frame. She's also quite into nerdy things like me. We're both giant Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones fans, and she wears some themed shirts from time to time. Now Reekbeard, being nearly a whole 2 feet taller than Tiny, just looms over her. The first time he saw her, he tried to chat her up. Tiny is 19, I'm 22, and Reekbeard is probably late 20s. When we've been waiting for the elevator or in the elevator, I constantly see him staring down her shirt. He's asked for her number in front of me after trying to talk to her for a good 2 minutes. My entire building has one elevator, so long wait times. Some choice quotes from Reekbeard include, "I could treat you right all night." And I literally stood next to her. "You should come over to my place and I could treat you like my precious lady. You're so beautiful, I just want to keep you forever." Now the creepiness is not really the worst part. Tiny and I just throw on headphones and ignore it. It's the smell. Over the past 6 weeks, the smell in the hallway has evolved and transformed. It initially started off smelling like rotting vegetables. The next week, the smell of rotting putrid meat. After that was a rotting fish smell, not unlike a bad yeast infection. I legitimately gagged a couple times waiting for the elevator. Last week, someone snapped and posted a note by the elevator reading, "The entire floor smells like garbage. Please clean up your unit. Other people live here too." The same day, someone had positively bombed the hallway with orange Febreze. It was so strong it even leaked into my unit. It was an improvement over the past few weeks, but it was strong. Eventually the Febreze faded, and it was replaced by the smell of BO with the scent of freshly popped pubic zits. A couple days ago I found the source. Reekbeard had opened his door as I was waiting for the elevator. His unit is directly opposite to the elevators. The smell that came seeping out could strip the paint off the walls. It singed my nose hairs. Even Beelzebub himself would cry. I had to run back into my unit and stick my head in the toilet and dry heaved. I waited for him to leave and I went and reported him to maintenance. That evening I hear the screams of my landlady. She's a terse Slavic woman. If you're a good tenant, she's great. If you're not, she will make it plainly obvious she hates you. She was screaming at him to get the hell out, and she told him she ordered a fumigation and cleaning service at his expense. She yelled so loud it penetrated walls of Babylon that made up the apartment. I'm not entirely sure if Reekbeard is being evicted, but it's entirely possible. I'll keep you guys updated if he does. 5. This one I call TOK, short for the other kid. He's pretty short, at least around the 5'6" to 5'8" mark. Based on how short he is to me, for reference I'm about 6'3", he had a bowl cut, spotty acne, and a pretty greasy face. His personality was basically your bread and butter incel stuff, like calling me Chad multiple times, and your normal neckbeard, My Little Pony t-shirts, and nice guy isms. Once tried to claim I violated his crush by sleeping with her without dating her. Other stars of the show. UA, that's me. Your biased narrator, 6'3", 17, almost as white as paper. Glasses, thin, and apparently a Chad by TOK standards. Passably attractive, done with everyone's shit. Worth noting, I did kick TOK once, so he has a mental image of me as an abuser, which will come up later. Milady, my girlfriend, 5'5", 16. Absolute powerhouse, brunette, tan, well, developed in certain areas, but she dresses conservatively most of the time, so it's not blatantly obvious. Not really beard bait, she's not into anime, games, or comics, but she's short and beautiful, which apparently does it for the beard. Worth noting, there's a hickey on her neck that's just barely hidden by her hair most of the time, so that doesn't help TOK's opinion of me. So let me set the scene. It's a nice cool Sunday afternoon. Milady surprised me with a visit, so I took her to the park where we had our first kiss because I'm stupid and cheesy like that. We walk, we talk, and have a few laughs. We stop by the swings we played at when we were younger, then go to a gazebo. We sit down and all is well, until the air turns foul. The smell of Cheetos and poor life choices fill the air. I hear the cough of a man who can't quite handle his vape, and turn to face the noise. There he is, dressed in stained black trip pants, a neon green t-shirt of some pony, and those stupid rainbow bracelets everyone had in middle school. The man, child, the myth, the legend, TOK. He hasn't quite noticed me, so I think that maybe I can avoid confrontation by just avoiding him. So I turn away. I guess something on my face didn't quite look right, because Milady asks me, "UA, what's wrong?" She's just quiet enough that it's not too loud, but unfortunately the mere sound of a woman daring to speak my name in his presence catches his attention. He turns to face me, and there's a seeming hatred in his eyes. Or could it be eye crust, who knows? He glares at me, ready to start harassing me, until he sees Milady with me. She's got her arm around my waist and her head on my shoulder, which to a normal person would just be a casual romantic scene that is not to be disturbed. But what does he see? An easy target, apparently.
UA! Who's this lovely girl? How do you two know each other?
My name's Milady. UA here is my boyfriend. She looks at me as she says this, and says it so sweetly like, my heart can't take it.
Well, I'm TOK. I live around here.
TOK seems to frown a little at the way she says boyfriend. He puts his hand out for looks like a handshake, and when Milady takes it, he deadass tries to kiss it. Milady pulls away and tries to hide her disgust. Out of habit, I put my arm around Milady and wrap my hand around her shoulder in a comforting way and get up with her. But I guess the way I wrapped my hand around her shoulder looked a bit too possessive to TOK. Let's go back to my place.
What are you doing? She's a woman. You can't command her or take her so roughly like that.
What? I'm letting him do this. We're getting away from you.
I know what's going on here. He's abusing you. I see the bruise.
He starts to frown a bit over-dramatically.
You can tell me the truth. I'll protect you.
Okay, get the fuck out of her way. You're acting like a dumbass.
No, step away from her.
He grabs Milady by the arm and tries to pull her away from me.
WTF, let go of me.
She kicks him in the nuts and then pulls her arm away. If you ever touch me again, you're never going to see the sun again. She's so hot when she's being threatening. I try to go over to call the SATPAM, local security basically, but Milady just shushes me and tells me it'd be better to avoid too much trouble. We end up just basically half running, half power walking back to my house. We watch TV a bit, she goes home, end of story, right? Nope. Later that night I got a message on my Facebook from a rando account that said, "Your new floozy may love you now, but she'll be mine soon enough." Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 19. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Does anyone ever get that feeling at Christmas time where it doesn't matter how much you've done and how organized you think you are, there's always something you seem to have forgotten? I was out shopping yesterday getting the last few things I need, and I got everything. Then I remembered, oh wait, no, I don't have any Coke in the fridge. I have to get some of that. So I debated about should I go up tomorrow? I was like, no. I was like, I don't have enough. I've been drinking a lot of the Volvic Touch of Fruit recently as a way of drinking less energy drinks. Still not great for you, but sort of probably a little better than them. And I realised, well, no, I don't have that. And I decided I was going to have a fry-up later tonight when I was done working. And I hadn't got tomato juice, so I thought, well, I'll just get that down at the local shop. So they didn't have enough Volvic, but not the kind I wanted. They had tomato juice, but it was a little bit out of date. And even though they did offer to give me it for free because it had expired, I was like, no, it's okay. It's more out of date than I'd be comfortable drinking. So I politely declined. And they did have cola, however, so I got the cola. So I'll have to go out either later tonight, because I think the shop, because it's the holiday season, this week they've been open to about midnight. The local Morrisons. I don't know about Tesco, but the local Morrisons open to midnight. And or I might go out tomorrow. So we'll see how tired I am when I'm done. I've been getting up earlier. My sleep's a little weird right now. It's like I'm getting up at a reasonable time. Then I'm doing what I have to do. Then I'll crash for a few hours. Then I'll get up and I'll just kind of relax for the rest of the night. Then I go to bed and I sleep for a few hours, but because I slept earlier, it's a mess, but I'll get it sorted. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.